Could Jon Moxley be working with Shane McMahon in AEW? Let's talk about all that and more as we break down last night's episode of AEW Dynamite. Welcome to Allison Analysis. I'm Ben Allison and I've analysed last night's episode of AEW Dynamite and here are my 5 key findings. In at number 5, what in the world is going on with MJF? Maybe I'm giving MJF too much credit here, but surely all these gimmick changes must be leading to something. When he returned from injury, he very quickly randomly turned heel in a heel turn which felt rushed, just made no sense. Then suddenly he became an American hero. Again, it made no sense other than the fact All In was happening in a couple of weeks. But it was just so rushed and so unnatural. And now he's just suddenly just said, okay, I'm not American anymore. It all feels very, very random. But maybe that's the point. Or maybe it's just bad booking, who knows. But historically, everything that MJF's done has always had a point to it. It's always been thought out in the long term, not the short term. So maybe the point is here that everything he's going to try, he's going to fail with, and then he's just going to go insane or something? I don't know. But what I do know is I'm more interested in Daniel Garcia than I ever have been before. He looks like a badass with this new gimmick. He really, really does. And honestly, I would not be too surprised if he beats MJF at All Out. In fact, I think he needs to make him seem like a really big deal. In at number 4, let's not disrespect Jamie Hayter. When she returned this past weekend to All In after 15 months, social media were calling her the Temu Becky Lynch. Now don't get me wrong, I'm a big fan of Becky Lynch. But that's just an insult. Why on earth are you calling her that? Jamie Hayter is so talented. Is it just because she's now dyed her hair ginger? In which case, well, she's dyed her hair ginger so many times before. That makes no sense. She's an amazing talent and I'm so glad that she's back in AEW. And last night against Harley Cameron, in the little time that they had, she looked great. But that's the issue. They only had a little bit of time. And I know maybe it's annoying how much I'm bringing up the fact that women's wrestling isn't getting much time recently, but I'm gonna keep bringing it up because it's relevant. 3 minutes of wrestling in 2 hours on a show which has a lot of wrestling like AEW Dynamite, it's just not really acceptable, is it? I mean, it pretty much is actually worse than the 7 minutes on Raw. It's just really, really disappointing. Both WWE and AEW are doing an awful job right now with giving the women's division time. I mean, AEW have been seeing an improvement in recent weeks, I will say that, right? Like, at least we had a few women's segments on the show as well last night, compared to Raw, which just didn't have anything else on it, but it's still not good enough. At number 3, Swer, Strickland and Hangman Page are just allergic to having bad segments with each other. Before we get into that brilliant promo exchange, I want to quickly touch on Hangman Page versus Ishii because boy oh boy was that a lot of fun. It absolutely was. Not much story there, but sometimes you just need to see two people go out there and have a bit of a banger, and that's what this was. But as always, when Swerve came down and both Hangman and Swerve had a mic in their hands, this segment got 10 times better. I mean, the fact that Swerve revealed that Hangman Page has a second child, that is just absolutely wild. Announcing that on TV when he kept it private. Madness. And also, sometimes, especially in AEW, once a champion has lost the title, they kind of no longer feel like that same star anymore. But Swerve, well, at least last night, he certainly did feel like a star. I cannot wait for their steel cage match at All Out. I really cannot. I mean, this could be one of the best steel cage matches ever. And I'm not exaggerating. Because everything these two do, it turns to gold. I mean, to be honest with you, there's a really, really strong argument that match should main event over the World Championship match. But let's talk about that now, shall we? In at number 2, I am sick of champion versus champion matches in AEW. I don't want to see Bryan Danielson versus Jack Perry at All Out. I have zero interest in it. Zero. I also don't understand why they backtracked, because originally they said that the Casino Gauntlet winner from All In would challenge the AEW World Champion at All Out, and then, to be fair, it was before All In. It was on Collision that they announced that had changed, but I don't understand why. Christian Cage versus Bryan Danielson would be 10 times more interesting than a champion versus champion match with Jack Perry going up against Bryan Danielson. And this isn't a diss to Jack Perry, I think he's doing a great job. But the fact of the matter is, they haven't properly established him yet as a TNT champion. They haven't properly built him up yet. When you do a champion versus champion match, it needs to feel special. It should feel like a huge deal. It should feel like the two best people in the company are going face to face. And pretty much every time that AEW have done champion versus champion matches, that's not been the case. They've done it too many times and I'm just sick of it. Obviously, Jack Perry will lose at All Out. So as far as I'm concerned, at that point, Bryan Danielson should actually be the TNT champion too. It is so dumb, and what's also dumb is them not clarifying on last night's episode of AEW Dynamite how this Casino Gauntlet thing works, right? Does Christian Cage have a shot at any time, like Money in the Bank, where you can catch it in post-match? Or does it have to be announced ahead of time? Does it have to be like a date set for it, but he can choose the date? They just need to explain things a little bit better, and this episode of Dynamite was really good, but the closing segment I was not a fan of. But in at number 1, could Jon Moxley be working with Shane McMahon in AEW? By far the most interesting part of last night's AEW Dynamite was when Jon Moxley came out with a new calmer presence about him, and he took the mic and he looked in the eyes of Tony Schiavone and he said it's going to take you all a long while to get your head around this, but it's no longer your company. Everybody was very confused about this, and obviously that was the point of the segment. One theory is that Jon Moxley's gone insane and he thinks Tony Schiavone is Tony Khan and all of that. I don't buy that. And later in the night, Marina Shafir aligned herself with Jon Moxley, and we all know Marina Shafir has an MMA background. We all know Jon Moxley somewhat to some extent does as well, and he's a big MMA fan. And guys, who loves MMA and who loves MMA in professional wrestling? That's right, Shane McMahon. Could they be doing a storyline where Shane McMahon is trying to take over AEW? I mean, we know that Shane and, of course, Jon Moxley, then known as Dean Ambrose, had a lot of history from their SmackDown Live days, so they've been on screen together a lot before, so it would make a bit of sense. But it is certainly a reach because they are doing a really similar story with the Elite at the minute too, so it might just all get a little bit confusing if they do this. But I don't know, I just have a feeling, right? It's not a prediction, it's just a feeling. But what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments down below. But that does bring us to the end of today's episode of Allison Analysis. If you guys did enjoy, please leave a thumbs up and subscribe. I really appreciate it, and I will be back on Saturday morning to talk a little bit of Friday Night SmackDown. I will see you guys then. Peace!